My name is Derrick Weyrauch. I'm the president and CEO of Palladium One Mining. Joining me today is Neil Pettigrew, our vice president of exploration and also a director of the company. Palladium One is a company that is advancing two projects, one in Finland and one in Canada. We are seeking base metals, copper and nickel, as well as PG mineralization. We have two very exciting projects, and Neil happens to be at our Ontario Tyko project as we speak.
Hi, Neil. Well, first of all, thanks, Derrick. And hi, Neil. You're on the ground with, I imagine, a selfie stick. Thankfully, it's not midwinter there. And you're able to show us around a little bit. So welcome to the show. How are you?
Oh, very good. I'm glad to be joining you here. And as you mentioned, we're right on site, and actually a beautiful day out here, which is nice. Just a few bugs, but that's par for the course.
Very good, very good. Hey, look, we're going to focus today on Tyko, the copper nickel project up by Thunder Bay. How long have you been? How long has the site, the camp been established? The site been established, and what have you actually got there?
So this camp here was actually built in January of this year. So this is what we call our Bulldozer camp, and this was a new camp that we built for just this year's exploration. Before, we had been focused predominantly on our Smoke Lake discovery, which we won the Prospectors Discovery of the Year for the Northwestern Ontario. And that is about 10 kilometers to the east of me right now. And so this camp was built to service the entire property. And as you can see here, we'll just give a brief walk around. A fair size operation. And this is fairly typical of a Northern Ontario type prospector tent camp, something you would have seen at Noront in the early days, right, with the discovery of the Eagle Zone. And so yeah, this is pretty nice. I've spent a great deal of my career in these type of camps and feel quite at home.
Right, and so I know there's some drilling going on at the moment, and you're hitting the targets that you want to be hitting. So maybe you can just describe to us that the process from January through to now in terms of one, establishing the camp, two, getting the drills up there, permits, permissions, relations with locals, etc.
Yeah, so we have a good relationship with the local First Nations. And, permits do take a bit longer these days. We took about 8-9 months per permit, but we've always gotten our permits on Tyko. Currently, we have 3 out of the 5 permits to drill on the property, and we're hoping to get those other 2 shortly. But we've been drilling away here now for, I guess it's approaching 2 months. And, no problems in that regard. In fact, that's one of the beauties of this project is that it is a year-round operation. So whereas, you have a lot of fly-in sections that are only in the wintertime, we can drill Tyko year-round. And logistically, as you can see, I'm standing on this very nice logging road. We have excellent access to much of the property. You can drive a half ton within 500 kilometers of Smoke Lake Zone, and this really helps control, the costs on this program.
Within half a kilometer, I think you meant.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, so tell us exactly what you're after there, because I think we've talked in the past with Derrick about ultramafic intrusions and massive magmatic sulfides, etc., up at Smoke Lake. So what is it that you're hunting?
Yeah, so we're hunting for massive copper nickel sulfide. That's really the prize, and that's really what Smoke Lake was. And so the Smoke Lake is a bit of a different beast. It's a system that's within a tonalite, and so the original mafic ultramafic that hosted the copper nickel has been intruded by this tonalite batholith, and that's had a few repercussions. It's compressed the zone into a bit of a sheet and remobilized the sulfide, and appears to have actually upgraded the sulfide. So we have individual nickel zones that grade over 10% nickel, not just nickel equivalent, and that's really rare in copper nickel systems. And so that seems to be a function of that remobilization and actual concentrations of the nickel and copper sulfides. We have these uber grade zones that's like.
But shall we show us that again? What were we looking at?
That's just the Jenny set back there, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, sorry. I'm one for boys' toys, so that's always exciting. Yeah. So tell us, in terms of that hunting process, you kind of, we've talked about multi-line VTM anomalies, and I think we've had some questions in about Z10 surveys, etc. So what are the other devices and tools and processes that you've been through in terms of identifying these targets?
Yeah, so we're really quite heavily reliant on geophysics, and that's really helped us out here, and we've invested heavily on it, and it's paid off. So we've flown the entire property with high-resolution VTEM max system, and we put that release out. We had 4 new multi-line anomalies that we are very busily working at testing. We've got permits to test 2 of them right now, hoping the other 2 come up very shortly. And I'm just going to take a little wander into the tent here, actually, because the bugs are starting to get to me a bit. But so the geophysics, we use a combination of EM and IP to chase our zones. And it has proven to be very fruitful. We've actually had a very good rate of discovery on this property using those systems. And they are integral to this style of mineralization. So the copper nickel sulfide forms very good conductors, right? And so those conductors allow us to target basically the mineralization with the drill. And today's technology, we can model those conductors to within a few tens of meters. And that's really something that's really only come about in the last 10 or so years to have that level of resolution, right?
But tell me, well, I mean, that seems extremely accurate, right? It's going to improve your chances of drill success. But you're seeing these super high grades. I mean, you talked about, nearly 10% grades. I mean, hugely unusual. But what else do you know about the ore body in terms of your chance of future success of continuing to hit those kind of super high grade stuff, and the thicknesses of those kind of feeder type systems that you're seeing?
Okay, so that's where we really are reliant on geophysics, because we use the downhole to continue to chase it. And so it's smoke. To give an example, we did multiple phases of both ground and downhole EM, and we were quite successful in chasing that out. And then, of course, you've got to do the 3D modeling with the drill holes as well to continue to follow that. And what we saw was a very consistent sheet of sulfide in that regard, followed by disseminated mineralization on the edges. So you would have this plane, let's say, of busted up mafic, ultramafic, and it would have disseminated mineralization. And then within that plane, there would be a chute of the higher grade massive sulfide. And chasing that massive sulfide is where we really employ the EM techniques. And Tyko, just to back up a little bit and give you some of the history of Tyko, when Derrick and I came into the company back in 2019, this was the legacy property. LK really was the main deal and still is. But this project had a couple of copper nickel showings on it. It was more disseminated levy. It wasn't until Smoke Lake was found that we really kind of opened our eyes that this property can host high grade massive sulfide. And then once that discovery was made, then we started realizing that we knew nothing about the larger property. This property has never been mapped by the Ontario Geological Survey because it's in a tonalite batholith. And the dogma at the time was that you wanted to be in the greenstone belts, you didn't want to be in the batholiths, and so no one mapped it. In fact, the Smoke Lake EM anomaly was actually found originally by Noranda back in the 1980s, and no one had bothered to check it out because it was in the tonalite batholith. And so when we flew that VTEM survey, we found those 4 additional multi-line conductors. We went out and did soils, and that works very well for us. Smoke Lake anomaly really was confirmed with a soil survey. We got a highly anomalous nickel survey sample over that, and we got highly anomalous copper nickel soils over these other 4 new VTEM max anomalies. And so we have a very prescriptive method of exploration. We like to think we follow a very disciplined approach, which is you do the geophysics, you do the ground confirmation, then followed by the drilling, and that allows you to have that high rate of discovery.
Right, and in terms of the okay, you're talking about these massive sulfides again. We've been talking 10% till now. With the massive sulfide, what would be typical? Are there any peers or references that we could look to?
Yeah, I mean, one of the most obvious ones right now would be Talon or Noront, in which case you have these feeder pipes. So these things, what we're looking at would originally have been a feeder pipe as well, or a conolith, technically speaking, but it's been busted up and been we call it transposition in geology, where you actually change the geometry of the original rock due to later metamorphic and structural processes. And so we have that extra level of complexity at our project, but we are getting a much greater understanding of it. Now that we know that things have been transposed into the foliation and lineation of tonalite, we can effectively chase them. And so the mineralization has many similarities with what you would see at Talon or Noront. It's just that we've had this subsequent level of intrusion of the tonalite.
Okay, so given you've got 25,000 hectares there, right?
Yep.
That you got a decent sized land package. I think people are excited about some of the grades. You've obviously been through a process to date, and you've got an obligation to the geology, but you've got an obligation to the market. And maybe this is where Derrick wants to jump in terms of the information that you put out to market. Some drilling happening at the moment, and I understand assays are taking a while to come through broadly in the region, but how will this information feed through into the market? What has the geology team been tasked with doing in terms of getting information to, front off into the market? I show the market. I mean, I don't know if that's one, Derrick, you feel more comfortable discussing, or you're happy for Neil to talk about?
I'm happy to go into that. I mean, we are going to have results coming out shortly. You got to remember there is a turnaround time in the labs, right? I mean, we've seen a tremendous amount of activity in the exploration world. And the labs, well, they're not as backed up as they were in the past. They are still, you're not seeing a 4-week turnaround these days in the labs, which is what they promised, kind of a fair, right? So, we are going to be seeing results come from these programs. And, we only started drilling, about 2 months ago. We do have that press release out that we had commenced just at the PDAC. And so, turnaround times are not that much different than they were last year when we were drilling, right? So the other challenge that we have had at this project really is the smoke lake. That is one of the 2 permits that we have not yet got, which is what we need to continue drilling the interpreted extension, right? So we'd only permitted a few holes around that originally, and we hope that permit will be coming in shortly. So, news flow, we will actually see that picking up here as we get results back from the lab.
Right. So how do those delays in the getting assays back, change the way that you process? I mean, obviously XRF is a possibility, but you kind of want to make, decisions on the ground using as much data as possible to increase the chance of success. So how's that affected your decision making? We
definitely want to look at it, but you got to remember sulfide is sulfide. You can't always tell what sulfide is, right? Even the best geologists would like to think they can, but you do use that as your targeting, but we also are hitting a lot of new targets. So we're moving quickly between targets too, right? And then we're going to follow that up with downhole geophysics. And so, like I said, there is a process we follow for this here. So there is control on the ground, obviously, that we use in order to continue to actively target the holes. We have ground hole EM crew coming in this September to follow up on some of our initial holes. And so, like I said, we do have a process. And I think we will see some of that news flow coming out in the near future.
Following the discovery of Smoke Lake, one of the first things we did was fly that VTEM program that Neil mentioned earlier. And our conversation, our focus right now is on these multi-line anomalies and getting those permitted and testing those subsequent to the additional de-risking that we did. But that could simply be because the mineralization is shallower. There's quite a few single line anomalies on the property as well. And that could just mean that response is weaker because it's a little bit deeper, So we've got a huge opportunity on this property, and we're just trying to take a very disciplined approach to moving it forward and knocking off various targets. And obviously, we're talking about assays, and to some degree, there's a little bit of delay. I don't think it's that crazy at this juncture, but you want to wait based on some of the drilling you do for the results before you go back in and do more drilling. And given we have so many excellent targets to follow up on, it gives us really nice flexibility to jump around and be more efficient with the dollars we have.
Okay, so you're finding good numbers in terms of the mineralization that you're reporting anyway so far, showing good numbers. The market is baying for good news in a very sort of difficult economic environment. Where you want to sort of a down cycle near the bottom. Who knows? But we'll come out of it. I think that's a standard play. We've talked in the past, Derrick, and I think I've been talking in the last couple of weeks to CEOs of companies who are late development stage, and what they're saying is that the thesis for copper, the thesis for nickel, is stronger than ever. OEMs, automotive manufacturers, are trying to secure supply for the next 5, 10, 15 years, right? There's just not enough for everyone, especially when you layer that with the infrastructure projects which governments are committing to all around the world. To get insert yourself into that ecosystem, you are going to have to come up with or start to come up with these economic studies. So again, questions sent in by lots of people. When will you be doing a PEA on Tyko?
Yeah, and I think that's a great question. And, one of the facts that is front and center in my mind is the recent news that the globe just hit the 8 billion population mark. There's fundamental demand, I think, across the commodity suite, and you need copper for pretty much everything, especially as we try and lift the lifestyles of lesser developed regions to give that, that Western lifestyle. So fundamentally, I agree with you. The demand is there. But quite honestly, with regards to Tyko, this is an earlier stage project. As Neil pointed out earlier, the Ontario Geological Survey hasn't even mapped the property. We're really the first ones hitting the property and testing it. So it's still a little bit earlier stage to start thinking about a PEA. And so I don't think anybody should expect that work in the near term on Tyko. We have a lot of drilling and exploration to do to see what we have on this property and what the potential is before going down that route. So we're still very much a discovery mode and resource creation. We don't even have a resource yet on Tyko. We're still adding.
Yeah, it's really, if you compare our two properties with LK, which is a much more advanced property, with about, I think, total over 40,000, approaching 50,000 meters of drilling on the entire property that has gone through 3 different resource updates. That is a different beast compared to Tyko. When Derrick and I took over Tyko, it had 2 zones with about 16 holes on it. That was it. And so we've discovered Smoke Lake. We have these 4 other multi-line conductors, as well as numerous those single line conductors, which, by the way, RJ, one of the historic zones, was just a single line conductor. And so we're in a different mode. We're in the discovery mode on this project right now, and that has its own exciting aspects. But PEA is a couple of years away at this stage.
Right. Okay. So you're funded for this year, Derrick. It says it in all your marketing material. So you're funded to do what you want to do for 2022, but you're going to need to raise some capital. Clearly, you're not going to do that in an environment like this. But at some point, you're going to need to make that decision. How are you feeling about market conditions at the moment?
Well, there's a lot of dislocation in the market. There's no doubt. And, I just did a little calculation last week, just based on our finished resources, our enterprise value is around $5 per ounce. That's giving no value to what we have in Canada. That's approaching the discovery cost of many companies. It's ridiculously low. So, we're in a very fortunate position because we are very disciplined in terms of how we execute our plans. We have a very nice cash balance that affords us time. Now, we are going to invest the balance of our flow-through money over the course of this year into Tyko. At June, we had a little over $3 million. And we would hope to be doing, let's call it circa 12,000 meters of drilling in aggregate at Tyko. So we're going to have consistent news flow, and I think we're just going to have to wait and see how the market plays out. I think, and as well, I think there's a very compelling argument to say, with so much dislocation in the market and volatility and uncertainty of supply chains and therefore prices, et cetera, how on earth do you actually do a credible economic analysis for a PEA or pre-feasibility study or feasibility study? I think at this point in time, it's much better to be on the exploration part of the curve where you can control your costs that much more and control your potential dilution. Because once you start putting out those economic studies, people are going to say, okay, when are you going to build? How are you going to get financed? And the financiers are looking at this market saying, well, you're going to need a really big cost overrun facility, assuming I'm even willing to finance you. So I think we're in a very good spot with the company and its evolution.
Right. And again, I don't know, go over old ground, but the market's changed, decisions change, which is that you've jurisdictionally de-risked. You're in Finland, very good mining jurisdiction. say, quite a sizable, meaningful project, certainly in the PGE space. And you've got Tyko copper and nickel project. Again, it looks like the beginnings of something quite solid there, so in terms of grades of anything to go by. Do you say we will have a portfolio approach to how this company moves forward? Is there any benefit or any pressure to spin out and maybe get some value attributed to Tyko?
Again, the question remains on the table. There certainly is benefit right now having two different projects with different complexions on two different continents. So we're quite happy with our current structure. We're in a little bit of a quieter time from a news cycle perspective in Finland, although we're like a duck sitting on a pond. The legs are busy underneath and you don't necessarily see it. And where we're focusing our effort right now in Finland is with regards to getting baseline environmental studies ready for a permitting process and starting to look at the technical options with regards to delivering a project. That doesn't drive a lot of excitement in the market, but it's highly accretive and valuable work that needs to get done. Where the excitement in the market is and that we can provide is the current drill program from Tyko. So it's still very nice to have a balanced portfolio with projects at different stages that switch on or off depending on exactly where the market is. And we just added another project in Canada, actually in the Yukon, the Canalask project, which is another one of these potentially high grade nickel copper projects as part of a pipeline approach in order to provide us a additional de-risking and optionality as we move forward.
Yeah, no, we'll talk about it. I did see that. I just want to kind of keep this on Tyko today. So Neil, for you, when does the excitement start? Because you've got to do all the heavy lifting and the work in terms of targeting with your VTEM, et cetera, and all the kind of surveys that you carry out. But when does it really start moving? When does the picture become clearer for you and then hopefully the market?
Well, once we actually start, putting out some of those results and, testing a few more of these multi-lines. As I said, we have 3 of the 5 permits. We still have 2 of the permits, which are tying up 2 of those 4 multi-line targets. And so it's about getting out and hitting as many of these targets, not just the multi-lines, but some of those single line conductors that Derrick had mentioned. And, finding out what we have. You see, this is one of the challenges that we faced at Tyko is when we made that discovery at Smoke, we realized that we had a project for which we know absolutely nothing about. At LK, to contrast again, you had the Geological Survey of Finland, which does excellent work. I already knew where the rock types were and where the mineralization essentially was. It was more of a farming exercise than a big game hunting exercise. Tyko's a big game hunting exercise. And so, Smoke was one of those big lions, and we think that we have more to be discovered there. And some of these other zones could really come out that way. There's serious nickel and copper soil anomalies on these targets. But, we have to get them tested, and then we have to get that results out to the market. And you're just sort of seeing the natural time lag that happens. There's a drilling phase, and there's results come back from the lab, and then we get this stuff out. And so, that is coming to the fore here. And I think you're going to see a lot more of that news flow naturally coming out as we can move into the fall here, right? So that is sort of how, there's always a lag with that first hole you drill between that and the results in the market.
And I think the other thing to point out is, given the lack of mapping on this particular property, there's a lot of work to do. And compare that to Noront with the Eagle's Nest. It only had a surface expression, I think, of 30 or 40 meters. That was it. Imagine that in a large property package. So it takes a little bit of time to find what you're looking for. And, that's why we have to take that disciplined approach to going after it, because it could be something that's very hard to find, like that needle in a haystack.
Yeah, Noront really was a needle in a haystack. That anomaly was known for a couple of decades before they got around to testing it. I mean, they were looking for diamonds and they were looking for EMS, and then they finally tested that conductor, right? Well,
talking of Noront, then there's an interesting question in terms of the infrastructure around you and accessibility to site night and day. Yeah, I know. That's why I'm raising it. So for you guys, that must be obviously one, keep the cost down, and two, make it a lot easier for people, travel in, travel out, rather than having to build large camps.
Yeah, I mean, we aren't reliant on a helicopter. Noront, you don't do anything without a helicopter. Here it's about a 6-7 hour drive from my house in Thunder Bay. It is logistically so much simpler than working in the far north. It's much more similar to our Finnish project. Finnish project has paved highway that goes right through the middle of the darn thing. We're not quite that good. We still have about 75 kilometers of logging roads we travel, but these are well-maintained roads. And so, logistically speaking, Tyko is a dead simple project.
Okay. Well, I appreciate, Derrick. Thanks for making this happen. I wanted to actually take a look at the camp because I think it's really interesting. Site visits, although I can't be there, but I'd love to go to site. It's always interesting to see the setup. It makes it feel real, and obviously speak to people on the ground and sort of hear the excitement or not in their voice. So I appreciate you setting this up, and we'll speak to you again soon.
Thank you very much.
Excellent.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.